From the northern shores and woodlands to the west, it's history. From copper mines and iron ore, the Great Lakes fishery, to the farmlands of the southern counties and east to Chesapeake Bay. Look at all that waits the sportsman across the USA. And sometimes when the moon brings out the diamonds in the snow, the stillness of the forest is encased in Arctic cold. The wind might whisper through the trees, listen to it say the beauty of our great outdoors across the USA.
Hi there, come on in. Deer hunting across the country is the most popular activity going on this fall among hunters. The white-tailed deer is the prize of all big game. Great eating, that venison. But how do hunters tactically go about deer hunting? Most of them hunt from a blind. That's the easiest way for a hunter to watch the woods. And hunting from a blind has some certain techniques that go along with it that are kind of interesting. Walking through the woods, still hunting, well, that has techniques of its own too. We're going to explain all about that, bring you a great recipe and a lot more, so stay tuned. I'm Fred Trost. It's time for the Outdoor Digest. A hunter walking through the woods can't really spend the time to look for deer with any accuracy. See, man's eyes are actually confused by all these trees. Unless you spend a lot of time in one particular area, everything tends to take on a similar look. But every time you move, you take a step, this look changes. And if you don't want to make any noise, you have to look at your feet. And that's time that you're not looking for deer. You're going to be a more successful hunter unless you're really experienced at stalking or still hunting, if you sit still and let the deer do the moving. The number one rule for keeping warm and comfortable in the woods is carrying everything you need for the day in a day pack. Food, snacks, extra socks, clothing, rain gear, and your heavy clothing. Don't wear your snowmobile suit or coveralls when you walk back to your blind. See, you'll sweat, and that'll make you miserable all day. If your rubber boots make your feet sweat, carry them to the blind and change into them. If your head starts getting warm, take your hat off. Keeping dry means keeping warm. And don't rush back to your blind. Take it easy, make a minimum amount of noise, and work up the least amount of preparation. That's how you can stay comfortable all day. Now, putting on dry clothing at your blind, even just changing your socks if your feet get moist, will make a big difference in your comfort. Now, Ron Bacon has hunted from this blind successfully every year for nearly 20 years. And a well-planned, well-constructed blind like this has some big advantages. If you have a blaze orange vest, well, you can change into a regular hat. Ron prefers this style because it keeps the sun out of his eyes, keeps rain off his face, and especially that rain from dripping down his neck. And a hat like that sort of cups the sound, allowing you to hear better. Now, in the woods, you want to take some high-energy foods. They'll give you a boost, a bit of warmth, and help keep you awake. And in addition to sandwiches and chips, take some snack foods, apples, cookies, chocolate bars, canned juices, and take plenty. That's the purpose of your day pack. Rather than eating several big meals, it's better that you just nibble as the day goes through. You can stay more alert. You never know on opening day when that deer will make its appearance. At 10 or 11 when hunters are going back to camp, and at 1 or 2 when they're coming back into the woods, that activity spooks deer. And if you're alert and waiting in your blind, this might be the time that you get your big buck. Now, this blind is made basically of pine stumps and limbs. Ron fills the cracks with ferns and branches each season. It's large enough so he can get up, turn around, walk back and forth, yet the only part of him that's visible from the outside is his head. A number of logs are laid parallel to the ground and used as rests for shooting. And visibility, well, the great thing about this blind, it's 360 degrees every direction. Now, from a deer's point of view, you can see these visibility lanes. Limbs off trees were trimmed, so Ron has a number of lanes, some as long as 150 yards, where visibility is open. No twigs are hanging down to deflect shots. And believe me, this is one technique that can make a lot of difference in your success. Don't try to pick a shot through all the brambles. Wait until that buck steps into one of your visibility lanes. And like I said, Ron has been successful in this blind year after year. Now, under your feet, doesn't matter if you have an elaborate blind or you're just standing by a tree. Clear all the leaves and sticks out of the way so you're standing on the bare forest floor. I bet that this November 15th, thousands of deer will be spooked by the sounds hunters make as they turn around or move their feet just one step in order to get in a better position. The leaves rustle, branches crackle under your feet, and the deer is gone. So take 30 seconds, go ahead and make the noise, but scrape those leaves away from underneath your feet so you can move around a little bit silently in all directions. Now, another big consideration of choosing a blind is the wind. If your scent is blowing towards the east, don't count on a deer approaching that direction. They'll wind you. But south, north, and west, well, they just might. And remember, those air currents change. They tend to move uphill in the mornings, downhill in the evenings. Now let's talk about the gun in the blind. Of course, you want to make sure the safety is on and the muzzle is pointed in a safe direction, but the nice thing about a blind like this is you can rest your gun in a safe spot where you can reach it when you need it and where you won't be seen. But another nice thing, an important thing is to keep your hands warm, keep them off of that cold metal. Leave the gun sitting down. You see how that blind screens Ron from where the deer could see him? So he can warm his hands. Now it's true, hunting in a blind all day can get a little boring at times when nothing is happening, especially after a bit of snacking, not seeing deer for a few hours when that sun comes out. Hey, don't be afraid to take a nap. It's one of the joys of deer hunting, thinking about how many deer might pass in front of you while you're dozing. But some hot coffee might keep you alert. Some people sit out and bring a book, sometimes even a Walkman, but I don't know, I think that takes a little something away from the day in the woods. In a blind like this, you have plenty of room to make some coffee. You could even build a small fire or use a fire starter. But keep in mind, though, the importance of using a blind is that if you stay still in one spot, become familiar with that part of the woods, and let the deer do the moving, and the other hunters move the deer, your chances are greatly improved. Cut some visibility lanes, build a blind large enough to move around in, take everything in with you need for the whole day. Don't wear heavy clothing as you walk in. Try not to touch the metal of your gun unnecessarily. Keep alert, and even if you don't get a deer, you'll enjoy your opening day in the woods. That's the technique we call hunting from a blind. Of course, you don't have to have nearly an elaborate structure like we showed you. You can just camp out under a pine tree and accomplish the same thing. Now, when you get back from your successful deer hunt, if you have a deer that has 10 antler points or more that are an inch longer or more, you will qualify for one of our Stroh's Hunting Awards. Or if the outside spread is 18 inches or more, make sure you get a form from us, fill it in, send it in, because that's how you can appear in our trophy book.
Here's a walleye taking the cold way through the ice. Jack Sepik was jigging a Swedish pimple about dark when he caught this 12-pound, 3-ounce monster. It was 30.5 inches long. And how about this burbot, or lawyer, or lingcod as these fish are called? Now, they won't win a beauty contest, but they are dandy eating fish. Craig Kirchmeyer's weighed 5 pounds, 10 ounces, was 26 inches long. And what a nice lake trout, or laker, as they're sometimes called, a native fish to the Great Lakes. Timothy McGee's 19-pounder is pretty to look at and delicious to eat. He caught it during May trolling a silver streak. Greg Johnson's 20-pound pike hit a bass buster beetle right at noon. Pike are a civilized fish in my book. They seem to feed all day long. This one was 40 inches long. Benjamin Hart, a 14-year-old, must be happy as a clam about tagging this 18.75-pound gobbler. He stalked this big bird on the last day of April and had a trophy-sized 10.75-inch beard. Jason Fraley's Farm County buck is a big one, 11 antler points with a 21 5/8-inch spread with a neck that looks like it's obviously been in a rut. Jason stalked it and he shot it with his bow. Al Gretzmacher used a rifle to get this buck, 14-pointer with an 18-inch outside spread, made it a big one. The certified weight on this monster buck was 204 pounds dressed. He took it on the second day of the season. Alan Roderick took this 20-pointer with a 20-inch spread with his shotgun. An interesting buck. Alan had to hunt this one twice.
Found out that somebody had stolen this rack from a taxidermist and was on his way up he thought to be on Big Buck Night. Little did he know that we had already taped it, that it was going on the air. He thought it was back in the days when we did it all live. But it's fortunate that you got your rack back. Now, I don't know what would be more exciting, the story of this buck in the woods or the story of the intrigue of hunting it the second time.
Well, they're both pretty interesting.
I guess, but the sheriff did get your rack back for you. Now, what happens, not to, I don't want to mention any names or anything, but what's the penalty for somebody who steals a buck rack?
Well, I hear they're charging him with a felony, and it's 3 to 5.
Well, Alan Roderick, that's quite a story, and as far as I'm concerned, 3 to 5 years isn't enough. By the way, it is an open and shut case that you are Outdoor Digest Big Buck Hunter of the Week. Bow hunters in Kentucky were harassed while hunting last week. Members of two so-called animal rights groups were out in force following deer hunters and harassing them in the woods. Almost 3/4 of states have enacted laws against harassing hunters. The estate of world-renowned bow hunter, conservationist, and bow maker Fred Bear has been settled. A major bequest has been made to the Wildlife Legislative Fund of America. It was included in the estate. Even in death, Fred Bear is still benefiting wildlife.
What kind of hair is used to make hair bugs for fly fishing? Hair bugs, or bass bugs, are designed to float on the surface and imitate frogs, crayfish, or various insects. The winter hair of deer and caribou is preferred for making hair bugs because the hair is hollow in winter, insulating the animals and floating the bugs.
Americans who enjoy the shooting sports have invented some unique and challenging games over the years to test their shooting skills. But one of the newest and most challenging of all has come to us from our neighbors in Mexico, and it has caught on with a bang and a clang. Metallic silhouette shooting is one of the most exciting things to happen to shooters since the invention of rifled barrels and telescopic sights. Silhouette shooting involves firing at steel silhouette targets of chickens, pigs, turkeys, and sheep at challenging distances. Action is a big part of metallic silhouette shooting, and that's where the fun comes in. Instead of trying to find a hole in a paper target with a spotting scope, nearly every shot fired at metallic silhouette targets produces a clearly visible, and if you score a hit, an audible sensation. A silhouette match consists of 40 rounds. 10 rounds are first fired at chicken targets, followed by 10 rounds each at pig, turkey, and sheep targets. Many youngsters do quite well in rifle silhouette with a 22 rim fire topped with a 4-power scope. As a low-cost practical training for the small or big game hunter, it's hard to imagine a more helpful shooting game than small bore silhouette. For a free copy of Silhouette, the newest shooting sport, call the National Shooting Sports Foundation at area code 203-762-1320.
We showed you a little bit earlier in the show this technique of hunting from a blind, and that really requires that you sit perfectly still, because a deer can see you move. When you scratch or you move, a deer can pick that up from quite a distance off, and that'll spook it oftentimes, and you're going to be out of luck. There's another technique that hunters use. It's called still hunting, walking through the woods very slowly. It too requires a lot of patience and a lot of skill, and we're going to show you how to do it right now. There are 4 basic ways to hunt white-tailed deer. Hunting from a blind or a post, where the hunter is hidden, is the easiest and most common method. Stalking a deer once it's seen, that's the most difficult. Driving deer past hunters who are stationary is a late-season technique, but the combination of methods is called still hunting, moving through the woods or a swamp slowly, stopping often, and watching for deer. Bob Bolton from Midland, Michigan, has taken 15 of 22 bucks this way, as he did on this opening morning after a snowfall. His technique is classic still hunting. Describe to me, if you were teaching me how to still hunt like you do, how would I make my way through this stuff?
Well, just basically try to pick an area that you're going to make the least amount of noise in. You don't want to be breaking twigs or or anything like that. I don't know if there's any particular avenue you're supposed to take out there. Just get out in the thick stuff and try to move as slowly and carefully as you can.
Do you, for example, step over things, or will you
Yes.
walk around?
Well, if it's more than about a foot high, generally I'll walk around if I can. Anything to be silent. Use your ears a lot, use your eyes. On a morning like this morning, you couldn't hear all that good. You could hear, I think out of the 7 deer, actually, I think I saw them all before I heard them. And I think all of them were within 40 yards before I got a look at them.
Why do you wear wool pants, wool shirt? Is this what you wear when you're hunting?
Yes.
This
Yes.
is your outer clothing?
Yes.
Why?
It's quiet.
Okay, so this doesn't make noise when you rub against...
Right.
Okay, underneath this you have a vest, you have a flannel shirt, you have at least 2 more long underwear under
Right.
there.
T-shirt and sweatshirt, insulated underwear. I'm moving real slow, so I'm not gonna
Work up a
get
sweat.
overheated, right? And
Okay, now what about your shoes? Let me see these boots here. These are still hunter's boots.
I don't know about that. They're leather insulated waterproof boots. They're light, so they're comfortable to walk in.
Okay, how tight do you lace? No, you don't lace them very tight at all.
They're not terribly tight, no. They're relatively new. Maybe they get broke in a little better.
Well, let's see could you lift up the sole of them here so we can see what... Okay, well, it's a good... Is this a Vibram?
Yeah.
Sole? How do you carry your rifle when you're still hunting? Do you put it on a sling over your shoulder? Do you have it ready to shoot?
No, I have it ready to shoot. I'll carry it like this. Sometimes you get into situations where you will, all of a sudden a deer will appear 20, 25 yards away from you, and it's not uncommon that you'll kind of see each other at the same time, and the deer will be looking at you about the same time you're looking at it, and you want to be in a position to get your gun to your shoulder and shoot real quickly if you have to.
Well, what's the biggest fault that hunters commit when they're still hunting?
I think basically just not paying attention. Not having themselves convinced that at any given second a deer might just appear in front of them. I think they really think there is a certain psychology to it, that you hunt better when you think you're going to see deer, and you pay attention better, and if you're in cover like this, and you're going to see them.
When you pussyfoot through this thick stuff, covering 100 yards in an hour, will you often jump them up from bedding, or are they moving, or what?
Occasionally you'll walk up on one, and jump it up. Most of the deer you're going to see, though, will be moving, generally kind of like you are. Generally they're just kind of sneaking along quietly also. So it's real important to pay very close attention, listen for any little noise, any twigs to snap, rustling, and I'm using my ears as much as my eyes every time that I stop.
Okay, now if we're still hunting through here, how many steps are we going to take?
Well, I think probably right here I might move around this little obstruction and get to this point. And
Well, I can see you're getting in the mood already. You're moving. You're moving
yeah.
like a snake. Okay.
I would then stand here for,
And scan the whole woods.
yes,
For how long?
probably at least 30 seconds.
Okay.
Again, remember to look behind you, too. Because,
They do come behind you.
well, sure, yeah, they can move into you from any direction, depending on the wind. If you've got a good stiff wind, you're not going to have too many of them move directly behind you, but yeah, you can see them in any position.
Now, from here, where are you going to go? You could go into the swamp. You could go along the edge. Which way do you pick?
I would probably get out into it.
Okay, so we're going to get out into it. Which way would you try it? Let's see how quiet you can be. This is the type of thing that would drive people crazy to
Well,
walk this slow.
maybe what I have to do, Fred, is just get myself kind of psyched up into it and have myself convinced that lurking behind every tree out there is a great big buck. And it's incredible how fast the time will pass. I look at my watch sometimes and I think I've been doing it for half an hour and 3 hours will have gone by.
Do you see more deer, do you feel, than people who sit or not?
I think I do, yeah, for the most part.
But it drives you buggy to sit?
No, I'll sit depending on conditions and depending on how good I think a spot looks. I'll sit occasionally, but generally I'll do it in combination with still hunting.
So your 22nd deer in all these years of hunting, and you want me to help you drag it out?
Sounds good to me.
All the way up this hill. Bob Bolton is a good example for still hunters, but safety is important when you sneak through the woods. Bob wears the minimum amount of blaze orange required in Michigan, a blaze orange hat, but in some states a full orange vest is required. Be careful, be alert, and you might become one of those lucky hunters who puts venison in the freezer by still hunting. Now that's the technique of still hunting, which many hunters think they prefer because they feel they can walk through the woods and relax a little bit. But you can see the way Bob Bolton explained it and showed us, it takes a lot of discipline, just as much as it takes to sit quietly in the blind. There are other techniques of deer hunting, driving deer, moving them around, but the two that we showed you, still hunting and hunting from a blind, are the main ones that are used. Now, when you get back to camp, well, we have a recipe I think a lot of deer hunters are going to love.
Marge Bledsoe sent us a recipe for Marge's Meaty beans, which is an excellent recipe for this time of year, especially for deer camp. You can put it on in the morning, and then when you come back from hunting, it should be pretty much ready. It's got 3 different kinds of beans. It's got your kidney beans and your little butter beans, and then the brick oven beans, which are more like just a regular baked bean type recipe, or bean. And then you got venison burger, which you don't want to fry completely till it's completely done. You just want to get it just to that just about done stage because you don't want to overdo it. And then everything just goes all into one casserole. And then you got bacon. Now this bacon is from a wild boar that I got, and it does taste it does have its own flavor. It tastes different than your regular processed bacon. And this is smoked, but it still lends a very good flavor to this bean recipe. And you want to cook that until it is completely done. And then drain it very, very well because you don't want all the grease into the beans. And at this point, if you wanted to add sausage to this bean recipe, I think it would be just excellent. And then you're going to make a sauce out of the ketchup and mustard. And you could use a barbecue sauce here, but I think that this lends itself very well because you are going to add vinegar and then just a little bit of brown sugar for a little bit of sweetness. If you want it just a little bit sweeter, go ahead and feel free to do that. And then you just put a lid on it and let it cook down all day. And you really can't hurt this recipe by letting it cook all day long. It just gets better and better. It's an excellent, hearty recipe that will really taste good when you come in from hunting, and one that I think Bob will really enjoy.
Well, this is a good combination recipe. It's kind of like a chili because it's tangy and all that, but it's kind of like a good baked beans, you know, a good bunch of baked beans. Be excellent for deer camp. I suppose there might be some conflicts arise later on over eating a lot of this, but hey, I'd have it at deer camp.
Yeah, this could be definitely a away from home recipe.
Oh, yeah. I would suggest that.
These beans in here, some of these are huge, Kathy.
Gonna make sleeping in camp awful interesting. It's a good recipe.
If this recipe doesn't strike your fancy, we must have tempted you with one of our fish and wild game delights in the past few weeks, whitetail deer hunting. What an activity. More big game hunters around the country regard the whitetail deer as the most difficult animal to hunt of all. It's so wary, and I tell you, it is so good to eat. I hope you enjoy our recipes. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you can get outdoors this weekend. It's a great place to be. See you next week.
No, I'll sit depending on conditions and depending on how good I think a spot looks. I'll sit occasionally, but generally I'll do it in combination with still hunting.
So your 22nd deer in all these years of hunting, and you want me to help you drag it out?
Sounds good to me.
All the way up this hill. Bob Bolton is a good example for still hunters, but safety is important when you sneak through the woods. Bob wears the minimum amount of blaze orange required in Michigan, a blaze orange hat, But in some states, a full orange vest is required. Be careful, be alert, and you might become one of those lucky hunters who puts venison in the freezer by still hunting.